G'day traders, welcome to wrap up of Tuesday 24th of July. Here we are on the daily chart. We're approaching this support line here. We've actually been hanging around it quite a bit now. Tuesday came around, hung around the area and actually pushed down below it, but we've got back up to it now at the close of the day, but we'll go through that. The previous day we came down towards it as well, and then Friday we came rocketing down and found a little bit of support around this area too. So definitely the market is using this area. It's identified it as quite a significant area, and you can see, it's touched it there, touched it here. Over here, it's really used it as well. So it's quite a significant area in the market. We've also got a trend line moving on the upside here too, which was starting to break down underneath. You can see it. I thought it might have held a little bit higher here, so we've got back underneath that trend line. But overall, the support resistance is still around this area here. Just to sort of break it down a little bit more, I want to bring over the 15-minute chart, because at the moment, back to the daily chart here, definitely the pressure's on the upside. We have got below that trend line. That's a bit of an indication that maybe we're getting some little bit of a downward movement, but the overall sentiment of a daily market is definitely on the upside, and it's what you've got to consider. But at the moment, there's certainly some downward pressure. We've had patches and areas where this has been really the case. Very strong sellers. We talked about it on Friday, so this is basically, we've got 5 days here. So this was the day we just had. Here's Monday, here's Friday. So Friday all of a sudden we got below a little bit of a level. We used that as resistance and pushed down lower. Pre-market over the weekend really started to drop down. Then Monday we started to get a little bit of a bounce. So even though Monday was a red candle, all of a sudden the buyers gained back their confidence, and they really started to push high, and this was a real strong move by the buyers. Then through the pre-market of Tuesday, we started forming some reversal patterns. They certainly weren't blasting to the upside, and what they really need to do is get above this level here before they're going to have any sort of significance and start to get a real roll along. So they certainly weren't like that all of a sudden gain back this this intermediate or medium term control, but there was signs of it coming. Okay, but then come the open of last night, and this is where this chart has a lot of value, the 15-minute time frame. It's long enough that you can see the overall market and the overall swings, but not short enough where you're getting this a real amount of noise. Obviously 1 minute, 5 minute charts, you're seeing every little movement, but then sometimes the daily chart, we're just not seeing this sort of detail in the daily chart, and don't really get a gauge for what the sellers are doing currently in the market. The overall market is up on the daily charts, but when you have a little bit of a closer look, the sellers have really done some significant things recently and broken through some significant levels and keep on driving these markets down and stomping out patches of buyers that at times was showing good form. So keeping with this in mind, certainly started Tuesday with the impression that we could get a continuation of these holding patterns and start go up and place some pressure on this area here. All of a sudden things changed. The market headed down really strong. They broke down through this level here really quite early. We're only half an hour into the market, or an hour or so, and we're already breaking down through some levels. Then all of a sudden through lunchtime we got back underneath this level here. Okay, then the market started popping up, and you might have believed that all of a sudden really expect these buyers to come in strong. But what was happening is, if you look at this market, when these buyers are coming back, and I'll show you this on the 5-minute chart, they were getting some resistance then to push them low, and as a result these markets kept on going down. It wasn't until right at the end of the day that they actually got a bit of a push up, but you can see even then these sellers have knocked them straight back down and have made lower lows in basically right at the end of the day in the pre-market. So some significant things happening there with the sellers. They're not going away anytime soon, unless some real strong holding patterns start to form and we start breaking up through some significant levels on these medium-term charts. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. Righto, so over to the 5-minute chart. So just keeping in mind with what I said there, with that 15-minute chart, all the markets started to push down really strongly. As far as getting on this sort of downtrend, it was a hard one to see coming. Really thought there was some support around these areas here, but then we started coming down a little bit further, and this is where it really started to become clear that the sellers were maybe going to have another go, and they all of a sudden started breaking out of these holding patterns that the buyers are starting to form. We've popped back up here. I'll break it down on the 1-minute chart, but there was a sort of a 5-minute sell or break out to the downside here that was coming quite prominent and looked quite well. We'll have a closer look at that soon. But then we started pushing down lower again, and it was this sort of area here when maybe as it starts to get a bit of a bounce here that you'd start to think that possibly the buyers are coming. But when you look at the 15-minute charts. This is this area right in here at the end of lunch where there was strong resistance and the market had a very good chance of going lower again. So, a lot of traders look to try and get back on the upside and go with the daily charts here, which is, a fair call. But have a look at the medium-term markets and realise that the current sentiment is still definitely on the downside. Okay, so for that reason, this 5-minute sell here, not a bad option. There was certainly some reason to believe that, and 13.28 is a bit of a significant level in the market. It tried to bounce up there. There was going to have some struggle to get through this area here. But overall, as a selling area, the 15-minute charts were showing that it had some strength and some chance of going down and making lower lows. And couple that with watching other markets, in particular the Russell, kept on just putting pressure on its lows and hanging around its lows. And what the Russell does, if you understand the Russell, it's a fairly big industry. It's very similar to the ES, but it's got its strength in that it's not limited by some of the real bigger corporations. And even though it's got some size about it, it's also got some so basically overall it's an industry that's free to move with a lot more volatility, without the restrictions that the ES has. So for that reason, it's great to use as an indicator. It's almost like a leading indicator, and you can, wherever it's heading, it's likely to try and lead the other indices in that direction. So in saying all that, this particular area here, you couple the 15-minute charts, downward pressure and resistance levels through here. Also the Russell hanging around its lows. There's a good chance of going lower. And that's all that means. And it's putting together. 15-minute charts certainly don't use it to actually get entries from it. It's more as an overall direction and go, okay, this is where I believe the market's going, and place more weight to that particular side. So how I'm using it through this area, going, okay, as far as my selling setups here, I'm still prepared to take them. If I'm looking to buy, just got to be careful and really want to see it breaking up through this level here before I consider buying. And you can see we've pushed down lower. Eventually they got some pressure and they got a bit of a roll on. They actually started breaking up through this area here, but then they found resistance at the bottom of this first pullback that we had, so around 13.35, and that's when they've pushed down lower again. So 13.35, mark down that down as quite a significant area in the markets, because it's bounced off it originally, blasted through it, they've come back up, tested it, and pushed the market back down. So that's an area that certainly the sellers are kind of holding a bit of a fortress at. So let's go and have a look at the 1-minute charts. So you can see a very active and volatile day. Many power points being hit, 5 power points on the downside in a row. Again, it's sort of, this first couple, that they were tougher ones to look at, and you can see this grey one here, which is one that, especially if we get a bit of a bounce off this one here, this grey one. So if you ever see a second grey power point, it's an interesting one to look at. This particular power fade, as long as it's going with the overall directional or power of the markets, momentum of the markets, is quite a good one. But what I was, around this area, hesitant to really look at any sells because there's some good support here. It's an area where the markets could have held and went higher. So they haven't gone a lot higher, but they've probably gone high enough to prevent this power fade from working and would have stopped it out. Once we got below that area and there was some real momentum, again, it's some of these opportunities to sell on the downside, it's there, but it's starting to look quite extended, and it's probably a difficult one to look at. But certainly this is where the sellers started to come in and show some power. What I really liked was we bounced sideways here, popped up here. They showed no sort of power or momentum, like they're going to push through to the upside. All the markets were hanging down and pushing down, and then sort of as it shows some thrust or some movement down here, looking for it to pop back up and get in around the 13.37 sort of region, because that's quite a significant support and resistance area. So also we're getting back underneath that, look for it to pop up, use that as resistance and push down lower, and from there you can see they've got some real thrust and power, which they broke through that low and continued down again. From there is kind of a similar situation before. We got all this momentum to the downside. And again, this is why 15-minute charts are quite handy, because you can see that this is all solid movement. It's not like it's sort of against the grain. It's just going with, even though the overall markets are up, the current medium-term sentiment is definitely on the downside, and that's what was happening here in these selling situations. This particular area here, this was a bit of an area where it was kind of a do or die, well, not do or die, but it was an area where they could potentially go up from. what I'd say is taking a step back. See this little bit of a sideways movement here. How it's trying to go higher, but not with any sort of power. So it's dealing sideways. All of a sudden now it breaks down underneath this point here, and the overall direction is on the downside at the moment. So this particular power fade, even though it didn't work, and I guess it's a difficult one because what it's doing is it's sitting right on a bit of a support level in a market that's already extended. So overall a different one to take, but from a setup perspective, if you see this sitting up a lot bit higher where it deals sideways like that, but the overall market you will go with the overall direction. Look for this power fade to work quite well. Reason that one failed, thought this is where it could have potentially got up. So again, not looking to really get in here. It's quite early, but this is a significant pivot area in the market where they've tried to go lower. If all of a sudden this fails and the market gets up above this, like right here, right now, without making lower lows, this is where they could really launch themselves from. It didn't get there. It failed to. This is where Russell really started to drag them down. Then they start making lower lows. Okay, so looking at that upside becomes a little bit more difficult because all of a sudden that momentum is taken from what looked like the buyers were coming in and going to have a go. It's taken away by them coming down and making lower lows once and then almost twice. And then this is where they started to hold, and obviously there's quite a decent push to the upside here. This is quite volatile, active market where I guess a pocket of buyers are really untapped here and push the market higher. But again, we've got this resistance right up the top here, and then from there they've pushed down a lot lower. But this sort of market here it's quite volatile. It's very rocking and rolling, and seeing candles that are a lot bigger than potential stop out, it's a tough area to really deal with. But certainly an interesting area, and just seeing how these sellers keep on bouncing the market back down and they keep on taking control. Anyway, bit to think about there, and that's the wrap up for Wednesday, and we'll speak to you guys on Thursday. Sorry, wrap up for Tuesday. We'll speak to you guys on Wednesday.